Okay. Hi, I'm Denise. I hope you can take a little bit. I'm a PhD student here at Chelsea, and I'm doing a practice making PhD performance. And yeah, so the title of my thesis is Digital Spaces, Experiences of Resistance in a Network-Based Economy from a Feminist Performance Perspective. And admittedly, the title has changed already a couple of times. That one, and what that exactly means, I'm just going to explain. I promise I'll try to keep it short as possible. And actually, what I want to start off with you is my departure point for this research when I got so interested in strategies and resistance from a feminist perspective in digital space, which is actually already quite a while ago. I hope it works kind of similar to that. So it's not switching actually to the video. Yeah, this was what I was going for, because actually this is quite important. The way we see this video is that it's a YouTube video. I'm just going to play a few seconds. I think that's enough. Stop it here. But it's really important that I show, like, especially YouTube, in this setting, so on YouTube, I'm not in a downloaded video in my presentation, which probably would have been easier from a technology point of view. So this is the way I encountered this video first. It was at home, in front of my laptop, in this intimate space, and I saw this expression of outrage, of resistance, and of protest. And still, I had the feeling it really did a lot to me, even though I was at home and it was sort of in this very one-dimensional setup in a way, because it was not a live performance, but still I felt it was very important and something that's happened there. And the other fact was as well, I could play it all over again, which is something, for example, which you can't do if you watch the news on TV. So I felt there was something new here, there was sort of this new form of protest, and a new way of if you want to say, empowerment. And so that's just sort of what I'm looking into in my research now. And I'm going to give you a little bit of theoretical context what sort of my research is embedded in, because actually I come from an art background, but also from an economic background. And so yeah, so of the theoretical context I'm working in, and also my performance practice, is that one of capitalism, which is also called the third phase of capitalism, and it's mainly based on a mode of production of immaterial assets, which means it's a lot about knowledge work, it's about emotional work, and for example, it's very much project-based, which means there's no such thing as a constant employment. We always work in projects, and it's a lot about networking and the individualization of work relations, which also results in the end, in a higher competitiveness between people, because we also compete between each other, and it's very much driven by the advancing technology. That's how it's possible, and that's sort of the new economic mode we're working in. And for example, freelancing is very common in creative industries. It's a very good example of that. And women are very much, overrepresented in this sort of working world, which in the end leads in a much stronger precarity in sort of work relations, because there's no safety net. Not as we used to be. That's why there's no such thing as maternity leave, or when you're ill, no one pays you because you're on a freelance basis. So this is sort of the context I'm working in, and also where I would say my feminist perspective comes in, is from this feminization of labor which means there's just an increased precarity in the production modes of economy, which also results in a common feeling of paralysis and inability, especially among women, to improve living and production standards. And for example, London regular example, housing costs, employability, and childcare. And so my practice, which is very much about the creation of a resistance against these things, but against a lot of other things. And I'm quoting here Chantal Mouffe, who's a political scientist, maybe some of you know her. And she sort of wrote this text in, I don't want to say in response to that, but it definitely refers to that. The text is called Strategies of Radical Politics and Static Resistance, where she writes, the profound transformation brought about by the current post-war stage of capitalism, which I'll just try to explain, will argue that most new forms of production allow for novel types of resistance to which artistic practices could make a decisive contribution, which is exactly what my practice is facing. So this idea, what are the new artistic practices that could contribute to this sort of resistance? And this is a performance I did only a couple of months ago, and it was in Nuremberg at the residency. And I was holding this workshop about protest techniques, which, I don't know that. I borrowed them from the Occupy Wall Street movement, who developed them a couple of years ago. So I hope now, because again it's an internet link, so I hope we can get there. The consumption of the internet can contain some issues. So this is just a short extract from this performance. I didn't actually say from the documentation of the performance that I did here. It just goes on like that. And actually what I find very important here, as I was also trying to point out before with the Crucible video, when we encounter this documentation, I want to say the piece of art, online, there's a lot more to it than as I go through, for example, in the gallery space. Because what is possible here is I can provide all this, I would call it metadata. That means on the one hand you have this documentation of my performance, in a way which turns out a bit comical because I did this fast forward and there's no sound and so people are following my instructions at the same time. I have the CC camera perspectives, I put people already in a certain position. And then if you want, you watch this video and then you can carry on with another link, actually leading you to the actual, producers of this technique and onto this website which is called Everyday Rebellion. So for me, this is all very important to the way of sort of consume my work. It's very important that you watch it online and then you sort of get into this loop of continuous consumption, which is what I'm really interested in. Okay. Maybe just leave it like this so I don't have the problem of coming back. Citing Chantal Mouffe here again, she's writing in the same text, just carrying on with the same text. An influential approach advocates what can be called a strategy of withdrawal. It claims that the institutions of art world have become complicit with capitalism and that it can no longer provide a site for critical artistic practices. And being a PhD student means I'm part of an institution, so I'm also, in a way, complicit. Strategy could be, against this whole capitalistic production, they actually withdraw from it, which is not what I'm going to do also in my practice. Because there's another suggestion from the research collective Barbel, who wrote a very, very interesting essay called Cultural Activism, which I recommend to everyone. It's a really fun book, so it's very quickly to read. And that is promote, if you want, the strategy of over-identification, where they're saying, we will follow Karl Kraus' provocative suggestion, and being forced to choose between two evils, one should always choose the worst evil. To choose the worst option, in other words, means no longer trying to make the best of the current order, but precisely to make the worst of it, to turn it into the worst possible version of itself. We call this the strategy of over-identification, which has been a strategy which I have been working with very, very intensely recently. And so on the one hand, I look into these capitalistic production modes, but also look very much into the political context of nationalism, also coming from an Austrian background, where this is always a very hot topic. And this is just one example of the work I did, applying this strategy of over-identification. And what you can see here is an original poster from Marion Maréchal Le Pen, who's sort of one of the rising stars of the right-wing party in France. And the other side, that's me. And I just was very struck by sort of the visual resemblance, and we have similar backgrounds in some sense. So I thought it'd be very interesting to sort of push this idea of over-identification with her as a character. And in the sense of nationalism, another work I did, you will see in a second where this is very relevant to what was just there before. I did this video, I would say, it's not a performance, called The Great Speech.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's.
Again, I'm going to stop it here. Because, again, here, you consume it online, there's this idea, and again, you can get into this loop of referencing.
Hi there, my name is Chris, and I'm the co-founder of thefreedomentrepreneurs.com. Today I'm actually shooting a video.
Which is another thing, I keep on having extra pregnancy tests on YouTube, which I find very interesting. Anyway, so again, it's sort of this cross-referencing, and then this mode of continuous consumption that you can go in through watching those videos online. So
I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business.
Yeah, that was the original I was referring to. Okay, and then coming back to my identification with this right-wing politician from France, I did this video, which is, if you want to call it bricolage, so it's an overlay of an overlay of an overlay of different videos. I'm gonna do this different now. Sorry. Probably the last video I showed, I think this is.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world...
Yeah, again, it carries on like that. And again, if you want, you can go into this loop of consumption. Go actually every day. I'm going to stop here because otherwise we don't have enough time for discussion. Just to give you a quick insight, what I'm currently looking into now in my research is where's the point of consumption encounter of these online performances? What are the new protest tactics in the digital environment? And when applying over-identification, where does the manipulation actually happen? So this is sort of the current stage. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you very much.
this kind of subversive mimicry. I think this strategy of over-identification, and it's something that once I started looking into it, it's come up in lots of different ways, described in different, like, it's the same idea but described in different ways. So like Keller Easterling talks about compliant activism, like she talks about people like the yes men, which seems kind of relevant. But I guess maybe what I was asking in my talk was what are the limits of that over-identification, because there is always a danger when working with stereotypes that you're just reinforcing, particularly when they're online and people might not be getting the original context, it might just end up, reinforcing right-wing views. And, there's that, or like racism, which, or sexism, etc., etc.
Yeah, but that's exactly actually what I'm trying to find out in a way. So like, when do I become the fascist and when I'm the revolutionary? Where's the line to draw? When does the manipulation always succeed and when it doesn't? And so I'm trying to find out. I'm not actually sure how I'm going to do it, but like you said, anyway, it's also about the effectiveness of resistances and the question: does it work as a subversive means or not? Which I think, as you also probably said very well with the likability of your videos online, that like it's not really isn't an indicator of effectiveness or not.
Yeah, which again is it's an open question. I don't necessarily have an answer for.
I think I find that a lot, that you end up playing into not even the stereotypes, but with the likability of things, you're playing directly into them. For me, that's, I don't know, maybe it is the over-identifying, but I find that bit almost quite exciting because you're like really pushing into areas where, and sometimes I got into a thing where I was like, didn't know where, sometimes I was like, I want to please these, like the really, like, the people who are really anti what I'm doing, and I want, to do, so there is like a weird, I don't know, I found, and if you said with all the likes you got from that one, I find it sometimes, I find that a very interesting area, but then I can see it gets very, very tricky very quickly. I think some of my work has been taken and run with by other things I had no idea about. That would happen, I think, with everything that anyone puts out. It's going to be read, misread, and it's the follow-up engagement. Maybe it's the loops and the things that you get stuck in, and the dialogue, and ending up in really uncomfortable situations. What your work does, it's maybe much more interesting than it being shown in a very safe space in a curated show that's meant to be your vision, sort of people's vision.
But also, because you picked up on this sense of like, I guess when you're working online, it's not, whereas, in past media situations where you have a sense of a kind of society spectacle, where you have like viewers and you have the objects that they're viewing, or, in an online space, there's this sense of relay backwards and forwards and feedback. It seems like a kind of key part of your work, that sense of an interaction where it almost becomes hard to say exactly like where authorship ends, and because the viewers, from the very fact that they're almost potentially manipulating what you're doing, they're kind of becoming part of the work, but then you're still reclaiming it because the authorship is still yours.
I think,
isn't that the line there? Isn't that a difference between you as an artist producing this work and anybody else who is just doing it for personal empowerment? Isn't there a line there? Certainly with feedback, young girl online saying, am I too fat or whatever, and being devastated and bullied or whatever, that feedback. But as an artist, that's not the intention for the work itself. So in one way, that feedback doesn't function in the same way at all. In fact, you're not doing it it's not being done for the person who's watching you. Isn't there a...
I do agree, but I think the reason, maybe I can't speak for another artist thing, but the reason for doing, where was I going with this? But the reason for doing them, I think, is not fighting, but getting against the idea of what an artist is and what they should be doing and things. So sort of working in these spheres that aren't necessarily traditional art work or art sphere is part of it. So the fact that that girl you mentioned who's making the video, Am I Too Fat? She's almost just as much an artist when you're discovering this work online for me, and that I think the really trying to view everything as, I know it gets difficult, but having everything as sort of no hierarchy and discovering things that interest you for whatever reason is maybe more exciting way to discover stuff, maybe not necessarily an artwork, but just as a way of navigating navigating the internet because it's so huge and everyone is putting themselves in so many different ways. Maybe it's interesting to have to make your own journey, bring things you want musically like that.
But I think
Yeah,
what your
sorry,
question is really good though, because I think that question of like, you know, is the artist agency, whatever it is that they're putting out there, the fact that they're doing it, you know, it is under the guise of some kind of artwork. At some point, it could be recuperated as an artwork. What relation does that type of work, when it sits alongside, let's say, other women, you know, have in shower scenes? How do those two things sit alongside each other? It's a really difficult question, and I think some artists say that, you know, what they're doing isn't parody. And I kind of probably say, well, that's not parody, but it is some type of mimicry. And from the minute then there is a type of, you know, no matter how close you are
that
to it.
shifts it totally.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Whether the viewer is aware of that
Or
the
not.
consumer is
Yeah,
aware
yeah.
of that or not
Yeah.
doesn't matter really.
And sometimes that can also shade into something a little bit kind of almost kind of a type of snobbery in the sense of like, haha, you know, you stupid audiences don't get that this is art. So like, you know, the joke's on you actually. And that, you know, that can also be a potentially problematic dynamic with the kind of artists that like, you know, the in-group who kind of understand the joke and then the kind of idiots who don't, and, you know, I don't know.
I agree completely with that. But it's again, I think it's what you ended on as well, as saying the point of consumption, maybe that's also about what, whether you're consuming it as an artwork as well, and you're aware. But again, that's the kind of thing that's pretty interesting about all of this, is where you're trying to get rid of that in a great way. And I was trying to say very well about like the processing things, where you're not suddenly viewing a specific end of something, or something that you can even say, oh well, yeah, I didn't, you know, that's not. You say, oh, you didn't get it, it's not what, but it's still part of some ongoing process.
I mean, I guess what anyone else questions?
Sorry, yeah.
We want ourselves a bit.
I'm a bit overwhelmed, so I'm talking quite a lot. So.
So I was just wondering, with the internet and with the advertising that comes along with YouTube, for example, like, do you have a choice as to whether, you know, if you're showering video, like, if someone approaches you with a shiny poo or something like that, they want to have, because you've reached that certain amount of views, then do you have a say over whether or not you can use, whether you want that on there or not, and how does that work?
Well, I mean, basically, when you reach a certain point of your videos being viewed, then you're offered monetization, which you can say no to. I've agreed to monetization more as an experiment, just to see what kinds of things would come up, and it was less interesting than I thought it would be. Actually, because I was kind of quite interested to see what it would do in relation in the way that, you know, you would also shown that. But I think you would probably you'd be able to say yes or no to that. I don't know. Is there something else to your question?
No, I'm just interested in kind of like the commodity, I guess, aspect of like how those things tie in, and the kind of satirical kind of view like that, and kind of back to what you say about whether the audience is aware or not, if this is kind of real or not, I guess.
Yeah, it's fun. I almost showed you, but I knew I didn't have time. But I had done this whole project where I had filled in lots of skills-based tests in order to win products. And skills-based is anything from like writing a little story or filming a little video. And the one that I won was for L'Oreal hair products, and that's on my YouTube, but it's also on their YouTube. So there's a whole channel of people where you had to talk about ways that you're similar to your mom. And I won like £100 worth of L'Oreal like shampoo and stuff. And so I then kind of again have co-opted that back into my artwork. But I mean, in a way, what my interest was there was not making it so parodic that it wouldn't win. It was like it had to be just at that point where it could win, which means that